All righty, I'll go ahead and get started. Kimberly is on, and she is one of our speakers today, and she is going to update us on what's going on at DPH. So I just wanted to welcome everybody to our April Roundtable. As you know, we have these once a month, except for next month and November and December. So next month is our summit. We normally don't hold a roundtable in that month. But I'm Barbara Derrick, and I'm the Executive Director of Smoke Free SC, and I've got my colleagues Tara Bell and Vanessa Logan on the call today. They are community engagement coordinators, so it's good to see everybody today. I did want to go over our summit, which is coming up on May 22nd, and we would love everybody to join us at that summit. Tara, you want to put the agenda up real quick? So our theme this year is From Smoke to Hope, and it's cessation strategies across generations. And so we just wanted to let you all know who all we have coming to speak this year. We have Megan Jacobs from the Truth Initiative who's going to talk about cessation strategies and how we balance youth access to against adult use of cessation things like e-vapes. Then we've got novel and innovative treatments, and we'll have a panel on that. We've got Rafael Meza from the Cancer Research Institute in British Columbia, who's going to be speaking at MUSC the day before. Luckily, we've got him joining us to talk about trends in cigarettes and e-cigarettes. We've got Amanda Palmer from MUSC, who's going to speak about e-cigarette cessation, a panel on hard to quit populations, a panel on youth prevention and cessation. And then finally, we're going to have an update from our youth summit, which is next Wednesday. So I'm going to let Tara talk about that in just a second. I wanted to remind everybody that we put this in the newsletter, but I wanted to make sure everybody understands that we lowered our cost this year for the summit to $50, but we're also going to provide scholarships to anybody who might need it. So if you or members of your organization or other partners within your community need scholarships to attend the summit, please just contact me or Tara, and we'll give you the code to put in. We want to get as many people here, and we know funding can be a restriction this year. So we just want to make sure that if you want to attend, you can attend. And Tara, do you want to tell them a little bit about the Youth Summit next week?
Yeah, so we're excited about the Youth Summit. We've never hosted one before. We worked very closely with the Fire Squad Youth Coalition out of Orangeburg and the Pickens County Youth Board out of Pickens County. They created the focus of the conference. They're the ones who just said they wanted to host a conference for the peers. So it started just with the conversation they were having. They titled it Escape the Haze, Facts Over Fumes. And members from the youth boards who are going to be leading the breakout sessions with students from all over the state. We have about 190 total registrants. That's students and adult chaperones coming from those schools, and we're very excited. They're coming from all over the state, so we hope to have good representation there. These are the different breakout sessions they're doing. Session 1 is Vape or Nah, the truth behind what's really in that puff. Session 2 is Brain Fog, how nicotine messes with your mind. Session 3 is Tobacco's Glow Up, how big tobacco is hustling us. And session 4 is Speak Up, how teens are changing the vape game. So like we said, the youth from the youth coalitions are leading these sessions. They've planned the presentations and they look really exciting. So we're excited to have the students there. We also have 2 keynote speakers during this event. Our first keynote speaker is from the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. One of their national youth advocates is coming into town from Indianapolis to talk about the work that Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids does, as well as their national ambassadors, and why there's a concern about nicotine and vape use amongst teenagers. And then our second keynote speaker is coming from the lower part of the state. I just lost the name and I want to make sure I say it correctly. So let me, I haven't added it to the agenda yet. That's on my list for today. Teens for Healthy Youth through the Man, my brain, I was sick yesterday, y'all, so my brain is still recovering. Sorry. Teens for Healthy Youth from the lower part of the state are speaking on work that they've done in their schools. They've helped 2 different ordinances get passed in their areas. So we're excited to have them speak to the youth to just focus on, changes they can make in their own schools and in their own communities. So we're excited about that conference that's happening on Wednesday, and hopefully it's a success. We'll post pictures and videos of it on social media, and then like Barbara said, we'll give an update of it at our summit next month.
So the summit, I'm assuming you're talking about the May 22nd summit, Dolores. It's going to be held on May 22nd, and it will be at Seawells this year, which is across from the state fairgrounds.
I'm going to put the link in the chat bar.
And then the youth summit is being held at Saluda Shoals Park. And Loretta, I know you're on here, Dr. Novance. Would you like to tell us the name of your group so that
Yeah, since I butchered it.
Yeah. And she might not be listening. All righty. Kimberly, do you want to get started?
Yes, I can go ahead and get started.
Barbara, excuse me. I'm sorry. I couldn't unmute myself. Yes, the group that will be presenting is our youth coalition. Low Country Alliance for Healthy Youth is a prevention coalition in Southern Beaufort County. And they are one of our main initiatives. So we will be having representatives from Teens for Healthy Youth presenting. We have chapters in every one of our high schools in Southern Beaufort County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Novance.
Appreciate it. Kimberly, I've made you a co-host. So good morning, how are you?
Good. How are you guys this morning?
We are doing well. We've had a little mix-ups this morning, but we're doing good now. We're glad to have you.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. I just wanted to come on. Barbara asked me to come on and kind of share some updates with you guys with what's going on at DPH. So, a couple things going on, a lot of things going on federally, as you guys all know, but with DPH in itself, we're going through a couple changes. The division has recently been merged. We were a standalone division or section since we've been reorged to DPH. We were the Division of Tobacco Prevention and Control. Then we went to the Tobacco Prevention and Control section, and now we have been merged with our injury group. So now we are a part of, our new name is, section is the Injury, Tobacco, and Substance Use Prevention section. And we are the Tobacco Prevention and Control unit within that section. So what that culminates is all of our tobacco, the staff persons, the way we stood before, along with the folks from injury, which includes injury, the core CIVP, that's core injury and violence prevention section. There's multiple different small units within that injury section where it deals with child passenger safety, the BOLD grant, which is Alzheimer's. Let's see what else. Child passenger safety, BOLD, core injury violence, and I think the violent death registry is still included. I'm not quite sure, but we have gone from a group of 9 to about 16. So we are doubled. So that's the first thing. And Emma Kennedy, I'm not sure if anybody knows her, but Emma Kennedy is the section director now. So I am still serving in the capacity of interim director for the tobacco unit at this moment, but we still have the structure under Jenny Daguizé, who is the bureau director for the Bureau of Chronic Disease and Injury Prevention. I know that's a lot. We use a lot of acronyms, but that is where we are right now. So we are still the Tobacco Prevention and Control grouping, but we are just called a unit now as opposed to a section or a division. So along with that change, changing to DPH last year. We're rounding up our first year. So in July, it'll be our first year as an agency, DPH. We have merged with another section and we are also moving. So the location that we are currently located in at the corner of Bull and Calhoun at the Mills Jarrett building, we will no longer be there. We will be moving out to Otari Parkway, which is in Casey, West Columbia. I think the address is Casey. So for those of you that are familiar with the Columbia area, that is close to, well, it's where the old SCANA or Dominion Energy offices were, closer to the airport. I could like to say, I don't know, but closer to the airport. So so about 10 or 15 minutes, depending on where you come from our current location. So we were slated, our grouping was slated to move actually next week, but that has been pushed back. So we will be at the building just a little bit longer. I'm not sure. They haven't given us a new date for moving. So we are all at the ready with crates packed and looking like we just need a new home, because we do. So we'll be moving sometime soon. I'm imagining by the end of May, the group will be at the new location. So we will definitely share that with you guys when we have made that final move, so we can so you'll notice an address change for us in that regard. Next thing, probably what you all are wanting to hear, is what we have going on federally. So as of right now, I know most of you have heard that the Office on Smoking and Health has been eliminated, and that is the office that actually funds our state programmatic work on the federal level. So being that that office has been eliminated, we are in a waiting game at this point to hear about funding going forward. Our funding year is slated to end very, very soon, as in Monday, and we still have no notice of award. So we're having to plan as if we are not going to be receiving those funds. I do not have any additional information about that. I'm waiting just like everyone else is waiting. So we're not getting a lot of communication regarding that. So I don't have much to add to that. And we just, you know, in the office, we are doing a lot of contingency planning. Of course, if we don't get the federal funding that we have projected to receive, that means we're going to have to make adjustments to some things. Thankfully for the state of South Carolina, we do have state funds, but as you guys know, you know, being on this call, some of you, we contract with multiple community partners with those state dollars to do work in the communities. And if we are not receiving those federal funds, then that means the funds that we send out to the community will be impacted as well. So it's a trickle-down effect. So at this moment, I don't have any definitive of number-wise, but at this point, we're having to plan to not be receiving those funds. And as we make decisions on what things we can make adjustments with to budgets going forward, any of our recipients, we will definitely notify you of that. And there is a clause, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but fortunately, in all of the contracts that we do have out that, you know, says if there's no funding, then we won't be able to fund you at the agreement in the contract. But that doesn't mean it won't be in the future, but just at this point, we may not be able to fund our contracts the way we had initially planned or laid out for the term of the contracts we currently have in place. So it's just a waiting game. It's been very frustrating for us in not just South Carolina and other states. Some states aren't as fortunate as we are to have state funds to be able to fall back on. But that's one thing I think South Carolina did right, with securing the legislature securing those funds for prevention and cessation services. So, more to come as we learn more, but just wanted to make sure everybody knew that, we're just in a waiting game right now. Nothing's definitive. We're not getting very much communication, pretty much none from the CDC currently is the way it is.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
see Dr. Keeley has his hand raised. Dr. Keeley, you want to ask a question?
I do. What explanation, if any, you just said you haven't gotten much in from the CDC, but what in the world explanation are they giving at all for eliminating this whole effort?
Right. We have gotten nothing, Dr. Keeley. When we log into Grant Solutions to see, our grants, it just says that our project officer has been riffed and they will be communicating more information with us as they get it. So it's very vague. We're literally in the dark talking with other states. It's still the same thing. It's not very much at all. There's literally one person, I think, that's still in the office on smoking and health that still is not communicating with the states on a level playing field as to what's going on. We're just waiting with bated breath, kind of. But no reason was given. I think ultimately, and this is just me thinking that, with the restructuring going on, that they're just waiting for that to take place first to kind of give the states guidance. But again, we have no guidance outside of just, and I didn't even talk to my project officer before she was briefed, and I haven't talked to her since last month because she's no
So
longer
by restructuring, you have some inkling that this whole body of work that's been done by this office might be moved to some other government agency.
I don't know about agency, and I can only speculate because I have nothing definitive, so I don't want to put a lot of things out there. But
Yeah.
that's just what's out there, is that they're looking at restructuring and reducing and cutting funding by X%. So with that office being eliminated and we have no one to talk to, we're not getting any
Yeah.
communication on that. We're just waiting.
Yeah. I see Dr. Cummings has a question you may want to go ahead and address.
Yeah, that's what we work. See, if we have to cut some contracts, that's going to impact our surveillance, right? Dr. Cummings. So with our ATS and our YTS, if we have to look at cutting some funding and contracts that could impact that, we're hoping to not impact those things as much as we can, but we're going to have to make some changes if we don't get the funding, because it's all projected out, based on receiving that federal funding, and then how our state dollars are slated out is based off the federal funding that is received. So if we don't have that, we have to encumber the funding that is associated with that, which is going to impact a lot, and surveillance could definitely be one of those.
The
So
Kymburle,
it would be useful to know, because you've got to be planning for the assumption of no federal funds coming in, at least in the short term. How you're going to perhaps reallocate the money that you have available. I mean, you've got quitline funding, you've got, but I'm not sure if folks have a full understanding of how those dollars have been sort of merged together, and they come out of different pots. And
Right.
and is there? I know there's been efforts to appoint a new director, obviously we're just citizens here in South Carolina, but we could be writing to whomever may get that position and urge them to think about how they might address the changes. I did write a letter to the new commissioner of FDA, because not only did OSH get erased, but also elements of FDA were reassigned, I guess, or fired.
Mhm.
And I'm happy to share that letter. I'm going to put the link in there so people can go see what we said. We tried to be kind
Mhm.
and not, scream in the letter, because we were told that would not be received well, but we did get
Right.
sign-ons from a lot of, senior people, and asked about some of the functions that, was being supplied by OSH, which, will be a huge miss. Fortunately, we've been tracking hospital in admissions and smoking status and doing studies to show that, at least for adult smoking prevalence, that data actually can provide real-time information on what the prevalence rates are, because I have a feeling you're going to be in the dark for a while. So you may actually want to have some discussions with your boards and other experts to perhaps come up with some ways to at least keep tobacco control functional here. And we sort of need to know what's happening with cigarette use and other tobacco products. Frankly, it's going to be, the real loss will be the youth studies that have been done, but maybe
Right.
local communities in their high school. So you usually can get a lot of schools will do their own surveys. So anyway, it's very,
Yeah,
very tough,
thanks, Mike. Let me
circumstances.
jump in. Yeah, thanks. I would love to, I was going to ask him about advocacy,
Mhm.
suggestions. So yeah, I would love to have you share what you've already communicated from your area, and can mobilize some other folks to do advocacy up our way. Yeah.
Right. And South
Mhm.
Carolina is not alone,
Mhm.
obviously. So, this is happening to all the states that have relied on sort of the infrastructure, which they've cut. And they did say it's reorganization. So, okay, what does
Right.
that mean?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And I've been in contact with a lot of the southeastern states. So all the states in the southeastern area, we kind of have a group. We were already meeting on a regular, but we've been meeting more so recently as a let's get here and talk about what's going on in each other's states. And so we're kind of keeping in contact that way, regardless of what happens. We kind of establish a network for that. But just kind of getting insight. We don't know anything definitive until after the contract year ends, right? Which we'll be able to kind of know exactly what direction we need to head into next week, because as of today we're still funded, but next week is not going to be the case if we don't get a notice of award. And then like you said, with all the advocacy efforts, reaching out to the legislature and things like that, talking about the importance of having all this great work that we have done continue, will have to be shared. And again, like you said, with the restructuring, who knows what that means? I have a suspicion that something will come back. I just don't know what it's going to look like. And that's just me thinking, but it's not a good place to be in right now for us.
Yeah.
It's very, very frustrating.
Mm.
So Kimberly, as one of the people that receives a grant from you, will this year's grants be affected, or are you thinking it's not going to be until the new fiscal year?
New fiscal year, I'm thinking right now, but anything, anything federally that anyone receives from us will be impacted. Anything state-wise at this point that you're currently in is fine. Now, after July 1, that might change depending on what we have to do. So this fiscal year up until June 30th, state, dollars that are allocated out to out within the contracts are fine, but after July 1, there could be a change in those amounts.
Okay. And I guess we'll be hearing from you in the next month or two about whether or not the grant agreement will even continue.
Right.
Okay.
What portions of it? Yeah. And sometimes we have, things that are split funded, right? The federal portion, of course, would end if that amount required it to be on the new a grant agreement. But if it's, like I said, federal at this time, I mean, state at this time is fine, through June 30. After that, it could be a change if it's the state funding.
And I
And of
think
course,
Mike,
federal, unless we get a notification.
yeah. And I think Mike had a question. Have they posted the position you're interim for at this point? No.
Everything's on hold. We can't do anything.
Okay. All right.
Nope. Can't do anything. So that's why it hadn't occurred yet, because all this was coming down the pipe and switching the position, the federal, that's a federal position. So that's how it's outlined for us, all of our staff. Yeah, it's a federal position.
Well, we sympathize with you and we hope for the
Thank
best.
you.
And
Yeah. We'll
we
keep
hope-
doing what we can do, you know,
That's right.
we have great partners. We'll keep doing what we can do until we can't. But I just ask that you guys we're trying to stay optimistic, right? And positive through this. It's kind of difficult. I've had lots of sleepless nights, which I know a lot of people on my team, and you know, within the agency, and definitely the folks down that in the CDC and the federal government that have gotten the actual touch, right? We're in the ripple effects, but they've actually been touched. So, you know, it's disheartening to hear that, you know, people are losing their jobs when they just go into work. But hopefully our safety net of the cigarette tax fund will help, you know, sustain the core staff, you know, in the unit, and we will get through this, and funding will come at some point, you know, from the federal level to help us continue the work that we're doing in that regard, because that's the guidance for us, right? So all the work we're doing is guided by CDC. So we'll have to just convert to best practices, right? If we don't have that guidance from them.
Any other questions for Kymburle?
I'm with you, Mike. Time to raise the cigarette tax again.
I think we're all there with Mike on that one.
It's time. It's time.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kymburle. We really appreciate you coming
no
down and
problem.
telling us what's going on at your level. And we all sympathize and we're here for you. If you ever need
Thank
a
you.
shoulder, we are all here for you.
Oh
All
my
right.
God. Dr. Keeley, you got
Thank
another
you.
question?
Yeah.
Dr.
Okay.
Keeley?
I think he was just saying good job.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hey, sorry, I was on mute. Catherine, this is for you, Kim. I've been working with Catherine Warner to get materials, quitline materials, and do you have any insight on when the materials library print shop and all is going to be back up and running, or what's going on?
Yes, so they are in the move with us. Like I said, we were supposed to be moving we were first slated to move last week. Then it got pushed back to next week. And then it got pushed back this week to, I don't know what, I don't have another date. And they are slated to move with us. So they are in limbo at the moment. And she did share with me that she was working with you on those materials. So I don't have an answer to that. But we are diligently trying to work to get you what you need. Do you have some supply? You're just waiting on additional supply?
Yeah, I got some supply a couple of weeks ago, and then I have another event
Okay,
right Saturday, the end of next week, and so
okay.
I've depleted a good bit. I have a little
What
bit,
you had?
but
Okay.
yeah, if they're not having to move, then maybe they can get printed, and then I can come pick up the materials
Right.
next
So I'll
Friday.
have her, and that's for an event next Saturday.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'll have her check with them to see, because they have rescheduled our move again, to see whether we can get those materials that you requested
Yeah.
ready
Okay.
for you for possible pickup, but you know, by Friday. But I'll have her check back into that. I appreciate you bringing that up.
thanks.
Kymburle, if
Thank you.
they're a downloadable file, we can help in that regard and just have them printed and sent to Dr. Keeley.
I'll
if we
check.
need to do
I'll check.
that.
I'll check to see if there's something downloadable so we can help with the printing, because I think that's the main issue, is the you know, the printing of it.
Yeah, we'll be happy to help out with that if you need. We
Okay,
need to get them printed quicker, and you can send us the file.
okay, perfect. I'll have her do that if we can do that.
Now we're going to turn it over to Miss Johnson, who's had a very big morning today already, and is now joined us.
I'm looking around to see Miss Johnson. Who is that? Oh, goodness. I'm sorry, Kimberly, that I missed your presentation this morning. I really wanted to listen in. We were working on some federal issues with Medicaid cuts, and so I had to take that call this morning. So I apologize, and I'm going to go back and listen to your recording because
Yes.
I
Well,
appreciate
Beth, I
all
don't
you
have
guys
any,
are
I
doing.
don't have anything. It's not good.
Ah, listen, it has been all not good lately. So I don't, like, yuck.
Yeah,
But thank you, Kimberly and team, for all that y'all are doing and for staying the course in a difficult time for sure.
yeah,
So, and I may repeat some of what Kimberly said, I'm not sure, but the loss that we are seeing at the federal level is great. I mean, for South Carolina, it's $1.7 million that the Department of Public Health, Tobacco Prevention and Control. No, you guys aren't even a unit anymore, right?
yeah, we're a unit. That's
you
what
are
I
a unit.
explained. We
You are a
we
unit.
are
Okay,
the
good.
Tobacco
So,
Prevention and Control unit
unit.
within.
That's right. Got it.
We are a
Okay.
unit within the Injury, Tobacco, and Substance Use Prevention section. That's what
Yes.
I should.
Okay. All these name changes have me thrown off, but I knew that you were a unit. That's the new thing. So,
Yeah.
so the unit lost 1.7 million in federal funds. What we know is not very much, honestly. The Office of Smoking and Health is mostly almost completely dissolved, and we've lost that federal funding in South Carolina, and 2025 applications have been, if you haven't received it yet, will be returned to the states. So that's happening. And then if I think one tiny bit of encouraging news is that if there is or was any rollover funding, that the states can still use that rollover fund. And that's really all we know out of the federal team. I think it's going to be even more important than ever for us to really focus in on our state work and what we can do. So that's really what I wanted to share, is the things that we can do. And Dr. Cummings, to your point in the chat, yes, it's time to raise the tobacco tax again, the cigarette tax again, and absolutely, Medicaid and tobacco funding go hand in hand. In fact, I've had that conversation twice this week with our state legislators. So I wanted to bring you up to speed on a couple of legislative issues that we've been working through. And I think my colleague Andrew from Hart was on earlier. He had to jump off to another call. And I do see my colleague Dana from the Lung Association on. So we've all three been trying to work on these issues along at state issues, along with all of our with all of our local folks. So, breezing through them. Smoking in cars with children. Senator Jackson had introduced this bill earlier. I mentioned this to this team, I think, a while back. This is a bill that, while we don't feel like you should smoke in cars with children, we don't feel like you should smoke anywhere where children are around. So this is a bill that we've been kind of monitoring. I don't see this bill moving. We have literally like 6 days left in legislative session, and there were some amendments added to the bill, and it's kind of stalled. So I just wanted to give you a quick update that the bill stalled. He has introduced, Senator Jackson is a great champion and advocate. He's introduced this bill many times, and it has not moved. That is the same case this year. The bill was introduced, it had a hearing, an interesting hearing, and then it stalled. So, smoking in cars with children, I don't think is going to move at all, even next year. This year is the first year of a 2-year session. So any bill that's not passed this year holds its place exactly where it is for when session starts again in January of 2026. That sometimes gives us a little bit of a leeway on what we can work with and how we can work with things. So that's a positive thing. It's the bill introduced the first year in a 2-year session. The other bill that we've been following is the vape registry bill. And this is a bill that would require the Attorney General's office to create a more in-depth registry for everyone who sells vaping or electronic cigarettes, vaping products. This bill has had, I think, about 12 hours right now of testimony, which has been really interesting for us to watch. The bill essentially, I think, is stalled for the year as well. It has had 2 subcommittee hearings because there were so many people signed up to testify. A lot of the local mom and pop vape shops, the Vaping Technology Associates, VTA, that entire industry really all came out in full force and had some very interesting points during the last subcommittee hearing. I think what we're seeing right now is, and I mean, this was so interesting to watch this play out in the subcommittee, but we are seeing big tobacco fight with vapes and the vaping industry on this particular bill. And they pulled out everything at the last hearing. It was really interesting as we watched and watched the responses from the committee chairman and his subcommittee, who were so confused because they kept hearing conflicting stories from big tobacco and the vape industry. I think the biggest takeaway on here on the vape registry bill is I don't see it passing this year. The Attorney General's office actually supported the bill, which I thought was interesting because they already maintain a registry of sorts. When we look at this bill from the national partner perspective, we look at it and say we don't really have any impact, or we don't really have any evidence that it's going to have impact on youth smoking or adults who want to quit. So for us, it's not something that we can support. We feel like it's probably going to have no impact at all on youth and adults prevention and control. The vape registry bill, there was a bill in the House and the Senate. There's some kind of interplay there, but again, I don't see it passing this year. It's not going to pass both chambers this year. It could potentially pass the House, but it's not going to pass both chambers. The last 2 things I wanted to mention. Just this week, we heard a heat not burn tobacco bill. In fact, yesterday we were testifying at the State House. So this is specific to PMI, Philip Morris International, and their product IQOS. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. IQOS, IQOS. This is heated tobacco versus combustible product. And the bill wants the product to be taxed less. Of course, the product is not even being sold right now in South Carolina. I think my understanding, the only state in the United States that has the product currently is in Texas. And so it's going to be really interesting to see where this bill lands. Great conversation yesterday with House Ways and Means Tax Subcommittee, because currently the products, the heat not burn products, they're also called heat, H-E-E-T, heat sticks. The products right now are defined by federal law as cigarettes. And in South Carolina, that means that this pack of 20 heat sticks that look like a cigarette eventually could be potentially sold in retail markets just like cigarettes would be taxed. The proposed bill would be at 3 cents. That would be the state tax for these products at 3 cents versus 57 cents. So there's lots of conversation around that. There was an amendment offered on the bill yesterday that would bump that up a little bit. I think it would be like maybe 28 cents to 30 cents. Still less than combustibles. And it would, I think the amendment, and I haven't been able to see actually that, yesterday it was just introduced in the subcommittee. But what I'm understanding is that the amendment would bring the heat stick product, the tax on that product, up so that it would be comparable to other non-combustible tobacco products. So it would be comparable to what the tax is on dip, chewing tobacco, snus, packets, all those things. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. There was a lot of conversation yesterday about lowering the price of the product, and would that impact the funding that the state receives? Where's the current funding, the tax for tobacco or cigarettes. Where does that money go? A lot of conversation. In fact, one of the members brought up about most of the funding for the cigarette tax, most of the revenue from the cigarette tax goes to support Medicaid. Yes, absolutely it does. All but about 10 million, which 5 million goes to Department of Public Health and 5 million goes to our friends down at MUSC for tobacco research. So that was brought up in the conversation yesterday. It'll be interesting to see how this moves and how it plays out. It could potentially be voted out of House Ways and Means early next week. It really is kind of hard to say. It was also interesting yesterday to see PMI, Philip Morris International, share the testimony and in support of it, of course. And then we had RJ Reynolds and Altria who opposed it because they currently don't have a product on the market. So that was kind of an interesting play as well yesterday to see some of the, to see the big three or so fighting back and forth. So, final thing I wanted to mention. There's lots of movement in the chat. I'm sorry, I haven't been able to see that yet. But the final thing I wanted to mention is tobacco funding, because I really feel like this is where we can push the hardest right now. We need the state funding more than ever. From the Juul lawsuit, South Carolina will receive a total of a little over $11 million. Out of that $11 million that South Carolina has received from the Juul lawsuit, none of it has gone to tobacco prevention and control. Last year was the first year that we were able to pull out an additional $1 million to send over to Smoke-Free SC from the state budget. That did not come out of the Juul Settlement Fund. It came out of the general fund. So what we have asked this year is for $5 million from the Juul Settlement Fund to go to Smoke-Free SC to be able to do some of those projects that we need to do. The General Assembly, both House and the Senate, has said absolutely no earmarks this year, no community investments, which is what the proviso last year that we received from Smoke-Free SC received. That is considered an earmark. It's considered a community investment. So the House and Senate come together and they said 0 of those this year. I'm really curious as to if they're going to stick with that. The Senate finished debating the budget late yesterday, and even in that conversation, they ruled a few things out of order, and now all of a sudden they have an additional $290 million that they can spend. So I think it's going to be next week is going to be really interesting as the House goes back in, takes up the Senate's version of the budget, and then it's going to be I think it's just going to be all out back and forth for the next 6 legislative days. Because remember, sine die, end of session is May 8th, and the legislators only meet Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So they have a ton of things to push through. In addition to all the bills they're pushing through, they have to get this budget passed. I don't suspect that they will pass the budget by sine die, and I think that they'll probably recess and then come back in either 1st of June, maybe end of May, but very likely 1st of June is what they will do. Again, remember, we're in the first year of a 2-year session. No one is campaigning officially this year for the Senate or the House, so that's going to also probably adjust their schedule a little bit and mean that they're probably, going to push it out to June. My ask is for everyone on this call to reach out to your legislators, and that you can. I know there is lots of folks on the call that are not allowed to lobby or have to be very careful as you're a state employee as how you talk with your legislators. But what I would encourage you to do is to reach out to your legislator and let them know the impact of this cut from the federal government and then 0 additional federal dollars. And if they say, well, where are we going to get the money from? We have a source. We have a source of funds. We can pull from this Juul funding settlement that this year, I think the payment this year was like supposedly around $1.7 million. We can pull from that Juul settlement funds. We can pull from that money that obviously the base intention was to go back to tobacco prevention and control. Although in the law, it says the money can be spent however. We can pull from that money and we can help support the tobacco prevention and control program. At least if we could get that 1.7 back, that would be lost from the federal, that would be something. So that is the goal right now. We are talking with House Ways and Means, Senate Finance. Those are the people that are the decision makers at this point. I had a really great conversation with Representative Lee Hewitt. If we have anyone on the call from that, I guess it's technically part of Horry, part of Georgetown County. He's a key decision maker in this. Senator Thomas Alexander from Oconee has always been a champion for us on this issue. And he's a key decision maker. Senator Harvey Peeler, chair of Senate Finance, key decision maker. We have to educate these folks and let them know of what this is going to mean. And someone mentioned the quit line earlier, and I will say that in my testimony yesterday, the comment was brought up, is the product IQOS, is it an approved cessation device? And it's not an approved cessation device. And so the comment came up about, well, what do we tell people who want to quit? And I said, well, we have this amazing quit line program in our state. I'm not sure if it's going to be able to be funded or not. I probably maybe exaggerate a little on that one. But, my point was, we do have a quit line. We do have approved cessation devices that people can call into, but they can't sustain these programs without any funding. So hopefully that message came across. I do think that Representative Heather Amons Crawford, who's also from the coastal region, she had a lot of questions. And so I think if anyone has any relationship with her, that would be a great point person to reach out to and just answer some of her questions, because she had a lot of questions about cessation devices. The IQOS product, of course, PMI had a product they were able to, pass around and show everyone there. Lots of conversation, but certainly, certainly we have to push for this funding now more than ever. And I would say too, that just because the House and Senate are saying right now that there will not be earmarks, I'm just not convinced that that's going to happen, because there are too many people all across the state that are going to be really, really angry when their community can't do the community projects to pull up that community. And if there is funding left over, then I absolutely think that those communities are going to be completely outraged, especially if we consider the cuts that the state is likely to receive from Medicaid and how that plays into all of our tobacco work as well. We talked about that yesterday. I pushed out some numbers. It was interesting that the folks from PMI were using TFK's numbers on the impact and the toll of tobacco in our state. And it's a concern that I think legislators don't quite understand, but they're getting there. And so we just have to help them get there. We have to help them understand it and get there to recognize the fact of how impactful losing these federal dollars, losing the Medicaid funding from the federal team, how all of that is going to impact our state. And now more than ever, we have to double down on tobacco control funding. I just said a whole lot. There's a lot in the chat. Let me get some water and I can try to answer any questions.
I don't know that there were a lot of questions. I think Dr. Cummings had a lot of comments. Dr. Cummings, do you want to unmute and talk to us about it?
Sure. There's a lot going on. I think, I wasn't aware of the heat tobacco product bill, but IQOS was introduced in Texas, and they've got plans to expand it slowly, actually, over the next couple of years. And, I would just say, just like you saw in the registry bill, which I oppose vehemently, but I think for reasons different than maybe Beth and some of the other groups, but cigarette companies don't like competition. They haven't had to compete historically. They have, deep pockets and lobbyists in the convenience store, gas station industries that have, really done damage to the state over many years, including, opposing the fact that we haven't raised the cigarette tax since 2010 or 11.
Right.
So times are changing. Now you have vape shops that are screaming because, the registry bills will really harm them. And PMI, which does not sell cigarettes in the United States, they've broken away from Altria, which had the rights to market the IQOS heat tobacco product and now don't. And they are a competitor. Altria is the owner of Philip Morris USA. They sell Marlboros. They're a big cigarette company. So PMI is coming in to sell their IQOS and sell a Zyn. That's the nicotine pouch. And, you know, what I would just say is competition breeds strange bedfellows. I think I've been saying this for a decade here in South Carolina, that I could see the market changing, and it's going to influence the politics that are there. And we could see where it might be helpful, because we're certainly better off with getting rid of cigarettes. That's the thing that we know causes as much harm as possible. We don't want non-smokers, especially youth, getting addicted to nicotine products. So I actually think there are some ways to leverage, like jewel money, or even licensing of manufacturers who are selling these, you know, products, or want the authority to sell them with, say, a lower tax rate, which I'm supportive of. I think we should have differential taxation, create incentives for people to go from the very dangerous to the less dangerous products. But with that, you should probably have to have some money for prevention and cessation for, you know, people who get addicted to these products, whether they're young or old, who want to get off of them. And that might provide some sustainable money. Just suggesting. So the world is shifting like sand under our feet. It's very disquieting. But there are some opportunities in what's happening here. And I would just urge everybody to get educated on what these products are. And I've been studying the heat tobacco products for a while. Particularly have published several papers in Japan, a country that has very terrible tobacco control historically. I mean, they didn't adopt clean indoor air laws until, you know, like 3 years ago. So they're sort of even far behind South Carolina in some respects. But their cigarette sales are going down faster than any other country in the world, because Philip Morris International, which did not sell a lot of cigarettes in Japan, came in and stole the market from Japan Tobacco and British American Tobacco, sellers of cigarettes. And it created competition. So the cigarette companies all of a sudden started introducing their heat tobacco products. And in about a year, it's predicted that heat tobacco products will be outselling cigarettes in Japan. And by the way, they ban e-cigarettes in Japan, although bans don't work and there's an illicit market like there is here. So, you know, the whole notion of prohibition, you know, when you have Chinese manufacturers that are at the root of some of these things.
Doesn't necessarily work, does it, Mr. Cummings?
No, it's not working. Anyway, happy to talk to any groups, send you papers, get you educated. Beth, happy to help in any way. You know,
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to write my opinions,
Yeah.
and you can, you know, take them for what they're worth.
We
Thank you,
appreciate
Dr.
it, Dr.
Cummings.
Cummings.
Yeah, I do appreciate it. Dr. Cummings, we need to get you a meeting, a face-to-face meeting with Matt Lieber. I really, really want to see that happen.
I'd be happy to.
All right, I'm going to try to work on that.
Yeah, and I know that some of the people, Matt Holman used to be the center at the Center for Tobacco Products.
Okay.
And he was the chief scientist, and he's an excellent scientist. He had been at FDA for years. We were all shocked when he left and took a position at PMI. But he's there at PMI, and I've stayed in touch with Matt. And, you know, you need to, you know, keep your enemies close, know what they're actually doing. Even though Matt is a friend and I respect him as a really good scientist, and he is a public health scientist. Now, am I skeptical of any manufacturer selling nicotine products for profit? Absolutely. But you know, if you have a common goal of getting rid of cigarettes, and PMI is not selling cigarettes in the United States, and all of a sudden BAT, that's why they're coming out in opposition, because they've never had to face competition. I think competition is good. It can really harm the cigarette companies. Anyway.
Yeah.
So
It
Dr.
was
Cummings,
interesting.
we've got a request, if you could share some articles on heat tobacco with Dana over at Long.
Sure, I'll send you a couple of, I'll send you my most recent paper and actually other papers. They're large papers on biomarkers. So, you know, you sort of have to be convinced, are they really safer? And I am persuaded they're safer based on the science that I've seen. And I'll send people, so send me an email.
Well, how about this, Dr. Cummings? Why don't you send it to us and we'll distribute it to everybody who is on the
Perfect.
committee today. That
Perfect,
sounds
because
good.
it's a big folder of papers, and be happy to do that.
Hey, and Dr. Keeley, I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, Mike, with what you said, asked Beth, is it time to convene heart, lung, March of Dimes, cancer into a work group like we had back in 2010 to monitor this and really seize the opportunities for advocacy? It seems like you know that would make the most sense to be really ready to pounce, on what appears to be an open time for open season for shifting sands, to be able to respond.
Good idea.
Beth, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think from our perspective, we are waiting for that legislative opportunity to really kind of start convening the troops again to push for, tobacco tax. Thinking through the lens of what's happening with the General Assembly right now, it could be an interesting time for us next year to push for this. I mean, again, knowing that next year is the second year of a 2-year session, we could float some ideas. We could push out some some interesting kind of dialogue. I think what we're going to see is the state has been kind of we've had this massive surplus every year in the budget. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with all the federal cuts and how those impact state dollars. And if we are going to see these massive Medicaid cuts to a state like South Carolina, we're going to be short some funds pretty soon. And so I think that will be a great opportunity for us to let's talk about cigarette tax. Let's talk about that again. Let's talk about tobacco taxes. What does that look like? So I think it took us 10 years to pass the first one. I think now is as good a time as any to get started, because if we don't get started, we're never going to finish. So, maybe it's time for us to look at, I would say probably this fall, having some conversations, pulling some folks together, seeing what we can do, seeing if the temperature of the timing is right in the state.
Yeah, and hoping that the vape registry fails. Mike and
Me
I
too.
both seem to think that going for licensure for tobacco retail for all products
Right.
would make sense.
Yeah. I sit here and I think we're all waiting to see what happens at the federal level. And then in our waiting, are we missing the opportunity to do stuff?
Yeah. That's a good point too, Barbara. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I really, I worry that by the time we all figure this out and everybody comes up and says, I need money because I lost all my federal dollars, we will have waited too late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the urgency right now is we have to make sure that legislators are giving this Joel funding settlement, this money from the Joel settlement. We are giving them an avenue of where to pull the funds from. If they say, well, we don't want to do this, we can't pull the funds from wherever. Well, we know where you can find them.
Yeah.
And then if they say, well, we're not giving earmarks this year. We can't give to Smoke Free SC. DPH folks, close your ears. Give it to DPH. Give it to the DPH directly. That's not an earmark. That is a state agency. And I imagine our friends at DPH will gladly take that money. I've been talking to your lobbyist. So I imagine that you will gladly take that money. we can work around their arguments, but we have to start having stronger conversations with our members to make them aware of the issue because they are swamped. I mean, they have 1,000 other people trying to, pull at them for all the things. When I met with Representative Hewitt last week, I went to Myrtle Beach because they were home on furlough, and I went to Myrtle Beach to meet with him, and I did that because I can't get in with him in Columbia because everybody's trying to meet with him right now. So when you see your people in the grocery store, at the ballpark, wherever, bring it up. I mean, and you may say, "Oh, I don't want to mention that. I don't feel comfortable mentioning that." They're our elected officials. Do it. Just mention it. You can be nice about it for sure, but you got to mention it to them because otherwise they don't know. They're not thinking along these lines like we are.
No. And they're getting that pay raise to hear from us.
Well, maybe. The Senate passed it. I don't know about the House, but maybe.
Maybe. All right, anybody else have any questions or statements they'd like to say? If not, we've run a little bit over, but I really
Sorry.
appreciate Beth, Dr. Cummings, Kymburle for giving us a heads up on what's going on. So we appreciate everybody and hope to see you at our conference in May. And just if you have any questions about it, reach out to me or Tara and we'll be happy to answer them. So thanks again, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.